I'm Valerie Wilson. I'm Curator of Textiles at the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, part of National Museums Northern Ireland. As a curator, I have responsibility for a fairly large collection of textiles, almost 19,000 specimens to date, and that textile collection includes costume and accessories, lace, linen, patchwork and embroidery in all its forms. In terms of costume, the collection includes some very fine examples of 19th century and early 20th century wedding dress. We've also got a very strong collection of everyday costume relating to the examples of road and rail transport in our transport collection. We have a very fine collection of embroidered christening robes, and as you might expect, we have collections relating to the very important shirt making and linen industries of Northern Ireland. In terms of the collection of Irish lace, we can represent all of the known techniques from Irish crochet lace, Carrick-Macross lace, Limerick lace and all of the various bobbin laces. Here at the museum we can also represent linen literally from flax to fabric, and we can also give an insight into the lives of those who worked in what was a very important part of the social and economic history of Ulster. The collections at the museum include the Living Linen Archive. This is a signed archive of over 360 oral interviews with those who have worked in various aspects of the linen industry in Ireland during the 20th century. Needlework education in Ireland included a very thorough training in all of the needlework techniques associated with lace making, knitting, crochet, dressmaking and patchwork. We have a very fine collection of 18th century embroidered bed covers, one of which we know to have been made as a marriage quilt in the 1790s, and all of which exhibit the really highest standards of needlework. The extensive collection of samplers, needlework sample books, whitework embroidery and lace has featured in an exhibition called Through the Eye of a Needle, which involved a collaboration with the Forge Mill Needle Museum at Redditch. The museum also holds regular classes and courses in needlework techniques, and those rely very much on the textiles collection for reference examples. I have had for quite a long time now a particular research interest in patchwork and quilting. And one of the highlights of the quilt collection at the museum would be the work of the Belfast maker Elizabeth McGill. Elizabeth was originally born in Bryansford in County Down in 1889, and both she and her sister were apprenticed as young girls to the whitework embroidery industry. In her later life, Elizabeth McGill undertook dressmaking and quilt making with a very inventive use of both fabrics and colour in her work. In her lifetime, she made over 200 quilts. The museum has 5 examples of these, ranging in date from the 1930s to the 1970s, and these quilts have been exhibited both nationally and internationally in quilt exhibitions. One of the ways in which the museum's collection of costume and textiles is brought to life is through the use of period costume, worn by visitor guides and front of house staff on a daily basis at the museum. All of these costumes and accessories are based on originals in the museum's collection, including a fabric sample book from 1906, shawls, hats, shirts and blouses. The museum's costume coordinator uses all of her millinery and dressmaking skills to bring these costumes to life and to reflect traditional costume or everyday wear as it would have been for the early 1900s in Ulster. Our folklife galleries provide us with an opportunity to show costume and textiles in a gallery setting, and their previous exhibitions have included costume, particularly that for wedding dress, and also utility quilts and the shirt making industry in Northern Ireland. The work of the museum is constantly ongoing, and as a curator I am contacted on a regular basis by people who want to have their work either recorded or who wish to make donations to the collection. One of the most recent additions to the Textiles collection was the contents of a small draper's shop from the High Street in Bangor in County Down, just a few miles away from the museum. This was McVeigh's drapery shop. It had been in business for almost 50 years, for the last half of the 20th century in effect. One of the most enjoyable projects I've ever worked on in my time at the museum has been that of Sloane's Draper's Shop. This shop was originally opened in 1887 in Kilkeel in County Down by Robert John Sloane. The museum acquired the contents of the shop, which included costume, haberdashery, shop invoices and receipts, in 1982 when the shop closed after almost 100 years continuously in business. The shop and its interior was recreated then in the museum and reopened in 2007 as part of a complex of buildings that explores commercial life in Edwardian times in Ulster. Today, on a visit to the museum, you could see a weaver at work on a traditional tweed loom, making cloth for the shop and cloth to be made up into waistcoats and caps. Sloane's shop and McVeigh's drapery shop taken together give us a really good insight into drapery retailing at either end of the 20th century. I hope that this brief glimpse behind the scenes has given you a bit of an insight into the Textiles collection and that it will encourage you to come and visit the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum.